This towering stone structure is the Cathedral of St. Quintinius in Belgium. Behind these heavy doors and thick walls lies a highly secured vault, guarding something that defies time. This massive vault houses a fragile, perishable piece of communion bread baked more than 700 years ago. To figure out how a simple wafer of flour and water survived for 7 centuries without decaying, we have to trace the exact geographic route of a medieval panic. The relic resting inside is the final destination of a 700-year trail, a journey sparked by a single human error. The trail begins on July 25, 1317, in the humble farming village of Viversel. A local pastor was called to the bedside of a severely ill parishioner. Arriving at the house, he rested his handbag, which contained a consecrated communion wafer, on a table near the entrance while he went to hear the man's confession. While the priest was in the other room, a curious family member noticed the unattended bag. Slipping a hand inside, they opened the small pikes and touched the communion wafer resting inside, before quickly putting everything back. Moments later, the priest returned to retrieve the bread. When he opened the container, he found the bread he had blessed earlier that morning covered in fresh blood. Worse, the bleeding bread was physically glued to the linen cloth lining the bottom of the case, firmly cemented in place. Panicking, the priest grabbed the bag and fled the house. A standard religious ritual had suddenly become a source of immense fear. The terrified priest ran all the way to the neighboring town of Lumen to find another pastor and figure out what to do. On August 1, 1317, they made a decision. The anomaly had to be moved out of the local villages and taken to the safety of the Benedictine Abbey of Herkenrode. As the priest carried the relic down the dirt roads, things escalated. Numerous witnesses along the route reported seeing the face of Christ, crowned with thorns, manifesting directly on the surface of the bloody bread. The environment itself reacted. As the priest rushed past the Sacramentsberg hilltop, an entire flock of grazing sheep suddenly dropped to their knees. By carrying the bleeding wafer out onto the open roads, the priest forced a private mistake into the public eye, drawing crowds of witnesses into the strange phenomenon. The exhausted priest finally reached the brick walls of Herkenrode Abbey. The nuns immediately took the object in and placed it on public display for deep veneration. It was officially named the Blessed Sacrament of the Miracle. Over the following centuries, the object took on an active role for the monastery. Historical records credit the presence of the exposed relic with repeatedly stopping fires from consuming the abbey. For centuries, the presence of the host in the chapel was credited with keeping the monastery's timber-framed buildings safe from fire. Medieval accounts of kneeling sheep and supernatural fires often fade into myth over time, but this artifact remained physically present, inviting rigorous scrutiny. By the 18th century, church officials launched intense physical investigations to verify how a piece of 14th-century bread, soaked in blood, was resisting natural decay. The evidence was personally examined by the highest-ranking authorities of the era, including the Apostolic Nuncio Carafa, the Bishop of Liège, and the Archbishop of Malines, who officially presented it during a formal visit from the Archduchess Isabel. The continued veneration of this relic relied on hard proof, surviving generations of institutional testing to verify its preservation against the elements. The relic stayed safely at the abbey until the monastery was forced to close in 1796. In 1804, it was transferred one last time to its permanent vault in Hasselt. The original 1317 journey left physical scars on the landscape. At Sacramentsberg, exactly where the flock of sheep dropped to their knees, the Palmers family built a stone memorial chapel in 1854 to mark the ground. And the event remains a living part of the culture. Massive crowds still gather for solemn processions, carrying the historic shrine through the streets in honor of that August day. A momentary breach of protocol in a 14th-century sick room left a bloodstain on a piece of linen. Today, that single incident dictates the placement of monuments, the path of massive city processions, and the heavy stone fortifications of the St. Quintinius Cathedral.